All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Proof of Coverage podcast. I'm super excited about today's episode. This is Salvador Gallo, one of your co-hosts, and today I have with me the Ator team, who is doing their big unveiling of their hardware and their team at ETH Denver 2024 this week. So very excited to have the guys with me, and I'm going to let them do a bit of an introduction on themselves.
Hi, I'm Anon Morpho, one of the founders here at Ator. We are thrilled to join you on this podcast. We were thrilled to present at the Real World event. We're so proud of our community and are celebrating our 1-year anniversary of all our hard work and the community's hard work in building an anonymous network, and can't wait to get these hardware shipped out and running the largest decentralized physical infrastructure in the world.
Hi all, I'm Neuratic, one of the founders also at Ator. It's a pleasure to be here at Denver, pleasure to meet you, Sal, in real life. Truly one of the best podcasts to be on, so glad we could do it on the trip in person, and hopefully this will be a good one.
Hi everyone, I'm DNB. I'm a Ator community bull. I'm very excited to be here. The event so far has been awesome here at ETH Denver. The vibes excellent. Everyone's so excited about what Ator's building and doing, and it's really great to be here.
Amazing, thanks guys. So as you guys know about us, we run a deep in fund. We've been in this space for a few years now and have been extremely on the edge of a lot of different use cases and areas of what entrepreneurs are taking and doing deep in with. You guys are the first project that I've seen that's leaning very heavily into privacy as sort of the core value prop of what you're building, and sort of the reason for having dedicated hardware is to provide more anonymity and privacy back to users, and sort of how the internet used to be built. So I'm curious just to get your take on how you got started on this privacy path. What is Ator? How did you decide to be inspired to build this highly ambitious and much different than anything else we've seen out there network?
I think privacy is a super key tenet of the early Web 2 days and still today in the Web 3 days. I mean, Web 2, the first interactions and applications were all text-based, little chat rooms where you could be anybody you wanted to be. And even now in crypto, the same thing. I think most people would even say they have NFT or other avatars for their online persona. And it's a chance to break away from, the quote-unquote normal realities that you want to be and create whatever character you want for yourself. And privacy fits into that because it is the comfort of your own home, the comfort of your own personality, and too much stuff on the internet now has been transitioned until now everyone wants to know everything about you. You no longer have this hidden online identity, but instead it's everything that you are doing on your web browser, on your mobile phone, even now to the extent of your fridge, is watching you, monitoring you, studying your habits, and learning everything about you that you don't necessarily want them to know. Anyone to know. You don't even want to know about these things yourself. Do you want to know how often your left eye is looking at the top left area of your screen? I don't really think so. I don't think this is stuff for human beings even to know. I think it's a fundamental right of humans to have privacy. I think from the dawn of civilization and the dawn of mankind, we've always wanted to have our own individual shelter, a place to go home at night where no one was watching us. Is that because we were criminals? Is that because we had something to hide? No, it's because you wanted to have a sense of self, a sense of autonomy, a sense of a place where no one else knows anything about what's going on except for you. And we want to bring that back. We want to change the narrative around privacy. I think even Grayscale applying recently for a privacy ETF. These are the kinds of headwinds and changes that are going to happen in the industry. And I think more and more people are going to realize this is a core issue. This is something that crypto can actually help with. It can be an extreme use case of crypto, and I think a lot of people in the Web3 and the deep in space are really going to resonate with our message.
Makes sense. Neuratic and DNB, anything from you guys on?
That was hard to follow. That is beautifully well put.
Fair enough. Guys, for our listeners who maybe haven't heard of Ator before, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about the architecture of the network, or how your mom and dad might think about how they interact and use the Ator network over time.
Sure. To me, that's two questions there, because there's one as to what network actually is, and the second, and hopefully simpler message is, if you're sort of a mainstream, don't even interact with crypto, what does a network mean for you? And maybe I'll answer that second question first. I'd like to see the Ator network as essentially adding a little bit of privacy that you can trust onto every application that you already use on a day-to-day basis. So what Ator is not is certainly, we're not a new type of web browser. We're not some kind of niche way of trying to go on the internet. And we're not an all-encompassing anonymity solution. Instead, Ator is a universal privacy layer for the internet upon which you can add existing applications, you can write new applications that sort of mount onto the network, and it gives you a bit of privacy that you can trust. The kind of privacy which isn't centralized like a VPN, which is actually decentralized, seamless, almost invisible for you as an end user. That is sort of what the Ator network is. And what that means for your mom and dad, whoever's watching, is A, privacy on the applications they already use, and B, hopefully through our hardware, sort of an automatic privacy in your home. And we can get into all that a bit later, but really it's just that little bit more privacy that you can trust is how I'd summarize Ator.
Makes sense. On the just general, like for our DPIN nerds now, like how is the network architected, or like how does it actually work under the hood?
Great question. So yes, the Ator network certainly is a DPIN of nodes, or as we call them, relays, all around the world, contributing their bandwidth to the network. And all of these relays are being rewarded in real time via a proof of uptime, which is our novel token distribution protocol. How it works from an anonymity perspective is a process known as onion routing, wherein each user's net traffic is encrypted over multiple layers and decrypted over 3 hops, such that no party in the entire chain knows the full story. In other words, no one knows who you are and what exactly you're browsing. That information is split in such a way that you as a user preserve your privacy to all parties in the chain. It's a key metric for our network is the number of nodes and the total bandwidth available to the network, and also the diversity of nodes. So obviously it's in our interest to grow this DPIN as much as possible. The incentives, these Ator tokens you receive for running a node, are a key part of that. And the Ator SDK is how applications actually hook onto the network. So it's kind of a developer's toolkit to route any application through the network.
Right. So the core concept there you described of onion routing has been around for a while, but mostly in Tor, but I think other networks as well. How maybe if you could just give a bit of the history on like how those two things, how what you guys are doing is related to Tor's architecture, and how sort of the relationship between the two networks has come over time, given the similar names and similar types of value add.
Yeah, so onion routing has been around for a long time. It uses open source IPsec standards, so it's peer reviewed. I think it was probably invented in like the 90s. The US Navy were doing it. The problem with onion routing is it's never really had mass adoption because it's never scaled. So it's too slow for enterprises. It's just been left behind in the 90s. I was a long-term Tor supporter and had a lot of relay nodes myself that I ran, and which it's unpaid. So all Tor node operators were unpaid, which is probably why it cannot scale. So Ator is taking that existing technology, and hats off to all the developers and all the contributors to that code base over the years, world-class work, and we are just empowering node operators to really scale that network in a way that's decentralized as well.
Makes sense. So you were running Tor nodes for many years without getting paid. I think a lot of our listeners would be interested in like what motivated you to be involved in the Tor network as part of something that, you know, in the past iteration you were not earning any monetary benefits for.
It's just that, you know, I'm a nerd. I love network systems, cybersecurity. I just find it a bit of a rebel without a cause. Always thought, you know, I miss the excitement of like Pirate Bay, Napster, sort of like WikiLeaks, Snowden, like all that sort of fun, like torrents, when the internet was fun and exciting, and then sort of got into like Tor and like crypto because of all that and found that exciting. Then I think crypto lost its way, and the last bear market was so ruthless, and then Ator popped onto the scene, and if you just look at the community, you can just see that excitement and hype and people talking like those glory days. So I've always been just into tech, this and that, and yeah, you know, it's disappointing that Tor node operators do not get paid. For me, I'm quite salty that people who tell you you're not allowed to be paid to run these relay nodes are paid themselves. So like whatever. But yeah, I mean, hats off to anyone who supports the Tor network. Hats off to anyone who's trying to contribute to privacy or any cause that's worthwhile and noble. We're not salty here. We welcome all builders. We welcome everyone. So, yeah.
Makes sense. That was interesting what you said there, which is that the people who control the Tor governance do get paid, but the people who are contributing to the network don't get paid, right?
Well, look, I don't want to open a can of worms here, and I just don't want to finger point at anyone, but if you look on the public record here, you can look at Tor's financials, have a look at who's funding them, have a look at where the money's going. It certainly isn't going to the Tor node operators, who without the Tor node operators, the network would cease to exist. So just look at the records, but I don't want to put anyone off from building on Ator or using it, and I don't want to disrespect any communities, this and that. We are above that. We have our eye on bigger and better things, and that's sort of that's our core values. We're not narcissists. We don't have egos. We're just genuine builders who are doing the right thing.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, getting to know you guys over the past couple of only since I think January or February, but the network has changed a lot since then. Yep. You guys have made a lot of progress. One other sort of technical question I wanted to ask you guys on that when we speak to investors, a lot of folks are interested to understand the architecture of the network is, Tor has relay nodes and exit nodes. Mm-hmm. Maybe you guys can explain how those two pieces fit into the Ator network as well.
Yeah, so the exit node itself is if you want to leave the Tor network. So let's say if I'll just do it from a Tor perspective. If I download the Tor browser and I go on google.com, the traffic will be tunneled through the Tor Onion network, and then it will leave the exit node and go to the clear net. So the google.com would see the source IP address of the exit node. So that causes problems because if you go on Tor's website, they actually publish all those IP addresses. So people ban them, and there's captchas and things like that. So the exit nodes, we are not encouraging retail to operate. The reason why we're not doing that is because the traffic is unencrypted, and those operators you need to know what you're doing. If you operate them in certain jurisdictions, you can't be held accountable for the traffic traversing through that device. The relay nodes themselves, everything entering and exiting the node is fully encrypted by default. So I'm not a lawyer, but the vast majority of jurisdictions do not have an issue with that. So the Ator will have, you could sort of think of the Tor network and the Ator network to be a fully encrypted private cloud. So eventually, as this network scales, hopefully we will see people migrating like cloud services, maybe exchanges, GitHub forks, all these applications and ecosystems within this encrypted network. And eventually it'd be nice to sort of migrate people's need to actually go out the exit nodes, because everything is on this ecosystem, but we're not naive. People are still going to go on Amazon, Google, this and that. So there will be organizations and teams around the world who will be aggressively spinning out exit nodes. And hopefully, and the beauty of this Ator, no longer bootstrapping the Tor network, is more innovation can be put to use, such as AI, implementing IP version 6, who know down the line to really optimize those exit nodes. And also we don't want the IPs to be public facing, things like this, so we can make the network 10 times quicker, 10 times more efficient, utilize proper traffic engineering that most modern networks do, which again, I don't want to speak too badly about Tor, but they're getting left behind by not utilizing these modern techniques.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears and ask you guys about the relay nodes that I got a chance to see that y'all had at your booth at the Real World event yesterday. One of my take on this, or why I found it so exciting when you guys first told me about it before I even saw it, is that I see this, the original version of DPIN, like 1.0, was sort of devices that you contributed to a network, but didn't give you any like first party value out of it. This was like the Helium LoRa advantage, where doesn't really do much for you to have this router sitting. I mean, maybe if you have some sensors near you get some value, but most people were getting very little value out of it. This is a much different sort of like consumer mentality than like you buy a solar panel, like, you get solar energy, and then now you own this thing for the next like 20 years. And so like you're contributing to the network, but you're also getting first party value directly out of this thing. And I think what you guys are doing is very cool because of that. And I think the next generation of DPINs will all have this, to stand out, they will need to provide some first party value. But anyways, just wanted to give you guys a chance to chat about like the relays, the hardware, how do people get them, or how do people find out more about them? When will they be able to buy them to mine Ator tokens, etc.?
Sure, I can open with that. So hardware has really been part of our vision and mission from the very beginning. The Ator relay is the first version of our hardware that allows you to contribute your bandwidth in a seamless plug-and-play way. So you purchase this device, really smaller than most people's hands, plug it into your router via Ethernet or connect it via Wi-Fi, and it will use your bandwidth to contribute to the network. You can put your ETH address in the setup page, and you can seamlessly get rewards. So it's really the plug-and-play solution to allow non-technical users to run a relay from their home. But that's just the first functionality. The second key part of the hardware that we have tested internally, we'll be rolling out a software update over the next quarter with this, is what we call the router functionality, where by plugging into your home router, the device actually produces a more private Wi-Fi signal. When you connect to that Wi-Fi signal, if it's an appropriate source of traffic, it will go through the Ator network. So that allows you to be more private in your home. You don't have to install special browsers, works with mobile, works with laptops, computers. It adds a layer of privacy to everything you're doing. So that is where, as you said, the first party value comes from. And hopefully the way we're going and the way this is shaping, the value proposition is exceedingly simple and hopefully a no-brainer, right? You, rather than paying for a VPN or trying to use some other solution, you get this device, plug it into your router, you have private Wi-Fi, and you also get paid for running it as a relay as well. So it's the all-in-one solution. It's not essential to have our hardware to contribute to the network. It's just an option and has enough benefits that I think we'll definitely be getting a good few of those out. You also asked how do you buy them and what that process looks like. We did our first pre-sale capped at 1,000 units in December of last year. That sold out in 30 minutes. And we're currently realizing that demand and shipping out units starting right in the month this podcast actually goes out. We did a collection at ETH Denver. We're going to have 4 shipping batches, and after that we'll reopen purchase for the relays. So stay tuned. You can also acquire one on the secondary market. It's on OpenSea as an NFT. That's how we sold the relays. So if you really want to get your hands on one, there are ways, but stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have much bigger numbers as we go through this year.
And I also wanted to say to that point, we set out to build the hardware that would be more than just earning new tokens. And I think I'm happy that you recognize that, because I think that's why the original Helium failed and why in their new version it's a much better model. And I think it's a lot better success because people want to have their cake and eat it too. So I think it's what's really exciting about this new phase of DeepIn.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about building an ecosystem, building all these developers. You guys are sort of building this private infrastructure, and then want to get developers to build a lot of other services or integrate their services into it. The variance between how successful people have been at this in crypto has varied a lot, right? There are a couple of extremely well-known networks that have sort of achieved escape velocity, have a lot of developer tooling around them, and a lot of sort of Lindy effect, and a lot that have failed on the way and have sort of gone into this dogfight of competing with dollars or competing with marketing or other types of things for developers. How do you all think about attracting? What type of developers do you want to come? How do you reach them? Just curious how you're thinking about building the developer ecosystem specifically.
That's a great question. I can also open on this. I actually kind of see it almost the opposite way, in that the Ator network is really an edge that other developers and other projects can leverage if they wish to add a little bit of privacy to their product. So we've spoken to a couple of the big up-and-coming DeepIns of this year, certainly other projects in the Web3 space and Web2 space as well. There is a real demand for these applications people are producing to have a little bit of privacy. And so if we make that value add a no-brainer for developers and existing projects, then I think that's where we start to see that flywheel. We start to see the natural adoption. And we've already had a great deal of interest just on these projects that will benefit off the bat from connecting to the Ator network. And we're using these projects as a case study as we build out this SDK. That being said, we do want to get organic developer activity, making new products directly on the network. Perhaps Anon could speak to it a little bit. But we want to have incentives for that. We have a community that's already very, very enthusiastic. Everything we release is open source on GitHub. We have people running relays before we even tell them to, playing around with our code, messing with it, running nodes, testing speeds. So I think we have the people, we have their attention. If we just get the incentives right, then we'll have our cake and eat it.
Makes sense. What's one example? You don't have to use names of, or it can be just be illustrative. But what's an example of a DeepIn or type of DeepIn project that's out there today that might want to integrate some of the Ator's privacy primitives into it?
Great question. So without getting too specific at this stage, we have DPINs that obviously have a local client or program that people run on their own machine. That in the case of the one we spoke to, they're taking in gigabits of data per second, essentially sort of crowdsourced from a number of relays. And understandably, a good proportion of these people running these clients and taking in this data from the DPIN would rather their IP address or identity not be linked to the data they're searching. And currently, there's no way to break that chain unless you go at the network level and add that layer of anonymity. So we have that demand. That's one of the big case studies for us. It's going to add a lot of traffic to the network sort of en masse, and hopefully also help us sort of solve that cold start problem, because, rather than onboarding users one by one, if we can onboard entire DPINs, which we plan to do, you have this immediate demand off the bat, and we can shape the network around that.
Where can if a DPIN project is interested about this, where can they reach you guys out or find out more?
Good question. Right now, before we open sort of these formal programs, getting in touch with us via Twitter, getting in touch with the numerous team members we're on a good few social media, you'll be able to trickle us and find us really anywhere from our community landscape.
Or team at ator.io is an easy place as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. Hopefully we get a barrage of interested DPINs coming after we release the pod. Guys, I want to switch a little bit to we've had, from an investment perspective, we're investors in Ator token holders or in Ator tokens, and have been building a relationship with you guys and getting to know y'all closer and how you built the network. I've been speaking to a lot of other investors about the tokens as well, and one of the main concerns that I hear from folks is mainly about privacy. There's an investment community, I think, this trope that the time of privacy in crypto has passed. There was a time when crypto people cared about privacy, and now they care about speed, or they care about TVL or something else. But we sort of surpassed the cohort of privacy-centric crypto users. Curious how you respond to that. How can you tell that people still care about this?
I think that most of this probably comes from a couple of things. One, clearly, Tornado Cash was a big issue for a lot of people, and depending where you are on the divide, is making code an illegal thing, and we're seeing with that founder, obviously, what's happening, and then the subsequent removal of XMR and probably Zcash from these other big exchanges certainly didn't help. But in those senses, those are privacy in terms of hiding what you're doing with your money, and maybe doing stuff like anti-money laundering and things of that nature, which that's open for everyone's opinion. That's not something that we care to comment on. It's not something that we are advocating for one way or the other. That's not what we do. Privacy as a whole is something that is totally different. I'm all against money laundering as a thing, because that's not what crypto's made for. But privacy is a big, big thing. And that's why Grayscale is announcing this ETF, because you see Rose, they are no longer just putting everything on blockchain. It's not can be completely private. It's like in a bank. If I went to Wells Fargo and asked for your bank account information, they wouldn't give it to me. But right now on Ethereum or Solana, a lot of these chains, you can see every little thing about you. And what is the biggest development that's happening now on EVM? ZK, zero knowledge. And why is all these developers excited about that? Is because this is a new facet of bringing old school, quote unquote, cash vibes back into the cryptosphere. And that's not even something that we're necessarily doing either. But what we're trying to do is privacy in terms of internet and its incentives towards DPIN. We're a DPIN project that values privacy, and that's a whole different landscape than what people think. Oh, privacy token. They think of these, first comes to mind is these XMR kind of tokens, but privacy is so much broader of a term and so much broader of an industry. And I think it's time for a lot of investors and a lot of consumers to really realize how big of an industry this is, and not to just pigeonhole themselves into, what is the biggest news topic when they first search that word.
Absolutely. Would you consider ZK as a competitor, as a category, as a competitor to what you guys are doing at Ator, or complementary, or how do you think about, how should people think about those two technologies?
I think it's an adjacent thing. I mean, what they're doing is blockchain tech, whereas our blockchain tech doesn't necessarily interact with what's going on blockchain. We're on the second level, which is the decentralized physical infrastructure, which is reward payment. Like what we actually did was vault. And I mean, what could actually happen down the line is when we do pay our reward operators in order to not necessarily dox all their wallets, that's where something like zero knowledge can come in, and we can even do multi-chain. Eventually, is something that we were discussing and with a bunch of other actually chains as well. Is when we make this chain token multi-chain, is when people earn rewards, can they earn it without exposing themselves so they can actually fully participate in an undoxed manner? And then what they do afterwards, that's not our primary concern. We're never going to advocate people to avoid their taxes or to, try to obfuscate what they're doing with their money. That, I mean, if people want to make their own decisions, that's something that they're going to do. It's not something that we were ever going to do, and we're never going to inherently build anything that is going to go against common law. We just want to protect basic human rights, which is the right to privacy and the right to, why did we use cash in this country for a long time? It's like not every single thing you need to do needs to be logged into a book. And that's what we're trying to get at.
100%. I think one of the reasons we've been really lucky to get some new guys is just you very much play by your own game and are very focused on the things that matter to you. And I think it's very clear in how y'all are building the network. On that light, like a little bit separate from the privacy angle, but we have a lot of DeepIn founders that listen to this podcast as well. And there's this mentality, like DeepIns are extremely hard to build. They're really complex sort of networks to build, even compared to Web2 companies, compared to other crypto companies. You guys have done something really interesting around how you've launched, both as a matter of, because it's privacy, you sort of had this like fair launch process. It's very community driven. You launched here at Denver last year. Specifically on the token side, you sort of like bootstrapped a lot of the early liquidity and action around the network with a token tax, and that allowed you to avoid sort of like the pitfalls that a lot of other DeepIns fall early. I think not many like DeepIn founders even think of this as an option for them. A lot of them are, Web2 founders or businesses, and you go raise venture capital is like what they think to do. How did you guys come up with this, or how has it gone for you? Maybe if you can just also explain it for the founders on the pod.
Yeah, I would like to first compliment all founders and entrepreneurs who are trying new things and trying to make the world a better place and make their lives a better place. I think any sort of new venture is always a struggle, and it takes a lot of quote unquote balls to really try to do something unique and new. And having faith in yourself is always exciting, and I wish everyone the best of luck in such an endeavor. As far as me and Neuratic, we are crypto natives, and we are in the ethos of the Web3. We met on the internet. We didn't even know each other, but we had both been very active on Uniswap and Telegram chats, and had worked in the background of other projects. And through talking to each other, we wanted to think, what's an idea that hasn't been done before that could really be special in this space. And we were big fans of helium, and it obviously didn't work out, but we thought, why has no one ever tried something like helium, but that actually has a use case, And that was the brainchild of that. And we didn't have VC connections. We didn't have, funds to go to, but we believed in the power of Web3. I mean, we had seen, so many projects take off from nothing. I mean, we see it still all the time. I mean, look at a project, even like any meme coin that just goes skyrockets. So we knew that there is money sidelined that is not VC funding. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's kind of like a predatory control funding. Whereas on Uniswap, it's a purely decentralized. Anyone could choose to invest in this project. Anyone could choose to, see it through. And we were lucky that a lot of people resonated with the message, and a lot of people were not necessarily trading it. They invested in it, and it's exciting for them because they've seen it from a year, everything that we built. And the beautiful thing about Uniswap and EVM is that they do have these tax contracts, which allows builders to actually raise in an organic way. It's one of the actual most amazing use cases of crypto. Is like, you can actually do this. You have an idea. If enough people believe in you, they will actually contribute and raise the money for you. And I think there's a big misconception about tax tokens. Like people, why is there tax in token? Well, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you have a 0% tax token, guess what? That means someone already pre-mined these tokens and is waiting to dump on you. And in this case, it wasn't some already rich millionaire or billionaire or someone who got early access to the team or fund. We said, let's just launch this and see what happens. And we're very, very fortunate that a lot of what we did resonated, and we've kept the community involved since literally day one. literally day one, we just announced this is what we're going to do, kept every step of the way. We've literally held VCs on a bi-weekly basis. We've reached out to podcast teams. We've made YouTube videos to show how this process can be done. And it's super exciting because we did it the way we wanted to do it. We had a vision and a dream, and we saw it come true. And we hope that's inspiring for a lot of other people out there and a lot of other projects and a lot of other founders. And most importantly, those people that are in their room right now listening to this who have a dream, who thought, how am I ever going to get the money to raise? How am I ever going to get people to look at my project? How am I ever going to do it? And now realize, you know what? These guys did it. I can do it. And that's the hope and message that we hope to bring. And that's the hope and message really of Web3 in general. And we hope that more and more people really can see crypto as that. And it is a place where anything can happen with the right mindset.
I think it's 100% inspiring. We've already seen that in the short time you guys have been working with other DeepIn, sort of like thinking about ways to implement privacy in a more in a way that's more congruent with, I think, how we all want to see crypto develop that are in this room right now. For just in case that people actually don't know how token taxes work, effectively, like in a Uniswap liquidity pool, you can, every time you trade against it, a user takes a tax which goes, or pays a tax which goes to the token treasury and can be used by the team to fund protocol development. And so these, effectively, everyone that buys the token is buying in at a discount. Like if you have a 4% in and out tax, everyone that buys in is buying in at an 8% discount. And implicitly, like as a token buyer, you're thinking like, I'm going to wait until this token goes up 8% before I like reach my basis. There's an embedded sort of like faith in the growth of the network, which I think is not true when you're buying tokens with zero token tax. And from what, we've run some analysis internally on just like the velocity of money in token tax tokens like Ator versus others. And I really do believe it really works. Like I think in a year, 2 years, 3 years, we will see token taxes play a more meaningful part in sort of like bootstrapping community-led networks. And I don't think that founders have yet realized like how tough of a position this puts VCs in, that especially ones that have raised big funds, where when you give them, when the only option is really to play on a level playing field, like venture funds are not set up to do that well. They're not set up to play that game. And I think a lot of VCs will be caught off just on their heels when they realize that there's this other option that's much more organic, much more flexible. And I think a lot of the stigma, around token taxes will hopefully dissipate.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I think part of our roadmap future in this year is we want to incubate other DeepIn projects because we think we have a very amazing team and leadership, and we have really great engineers and hardware leads, and we can, again, give investors a chance versus, not to disparage against VCs, but it's a different kind of mentality going and being beholden to big money versus I'd rather, for me personally, have 1,000 people invest $1,000 than one person invest $1 million, because that just shows the workforce that you have and the people that are going to give these ideas, give you different directions, and like you can listen to all the noise and then choose to tune into what you want to tune into versus just one person in your head and calling all the shots.
Yeah, I mean, the organic point I think is a big benefit that we've realized. I think we were quite lucky compared to these sort of projects that raise money and then build the product, because when you go that second way, you have a thesis that people are gonna want to build on you, but you don't know the answer to that thesis until you release it and go live. For us, that thesis is answered by us every single day by the sheer number of people who want to be part of this. Either they invest or they build or they run a relay. Because the community has literally led us from day zero, we know for a fact there are people out there who want to build on this and want to run it. And indeed, we've shaped and taken their feedback in to grow this machine, and our community is growing every single day. They've been with us from the start, and I think that's really truly our biggest strength. Even looking at social media, Ator is up there in the top 10 most tweeted altcoins consistently, entering top 3 as well. At times over the past year. So we have that noise and buzz around it, and I don't think we would have gotten that if we had gone a different path.
Yeah, and Ator as well, when the token was, sorry, my voice from all these events, when Ator, the token was launched, the price of it was at the height of the bear market, and retail, and it was max paying. So it was refreshing to see a project launch where, from a retail perspective, the institutions and VCs don't get such a massive head start. from a retail perspective, so that it taps into that sentiment where retail feel that they have an unfair advantage that VCs may do. There's need for both, but retail are often, left holding the bag. It was max pain for everyone, but
I agree. Well, no, for it's our job as investors to adapt, so I don't think you got to soften it up for us. But no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Guys, maybe to end it, we can do a lightning round on a crypto war story. Doesn't have to be Ator related, but just curious, since curious to hear what funny or memorable story that's happened to you guys in crypto over the years.
Every night, every night there's something going on. Where do we start?
No, that's interesting.
I can tell you a story. A friend of mine reached out to, I'm not going to name any names. He said, I need you to help this guy. He's lost his crypto seed. So I got added into a Telegram group, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, this guy's been in the space for a long time, and he was really panicking, and his net worth was lost, and he couldn't find it. So I'm like, I never met this guy, and I'm like, what city are you in? And he just so happened to be in the same city that I was in. So I went and met this guy to try and recover his seed. And we were running like multiple scripts, all this different software, trying to find like MetaMask sort of store. It basically MetaMask, Firefox updated, and he lost MetaMask, and he didn't have a backup of his seed. So I met this guy, and he was in a pretty bad shape. And then I got sucked into it. 2 days it took, and I nearly gave up. And then we found the seed. And he recovered all his funds, and I never even met this guy before.
Wow, how'd you find it?
I wish I could say like I'm a genius and I recovered it using some script. He just found the seed, but it was he had it stored in a file which he didn't think it was his main seed. But I mean, this guy was in a bad way. So and this was actually when Ator price had really took a hit. And I never charged this guy or anything. And then we bounced back hard. And for me personally, that's karma. So, I mean, that guy, I'm not going to name him, but he's an entirely good buddy.
Good. I hope he listens to this. You should send him this podcast when it comes out.
Yeah.
Guys, do you want to share a crypto horror or war story?
Back in my days as a smart contract engineer, I wasn't quite working on this project, but I was helping someone out who collected funds for some idea or other, and he was looking ready to go, and he'd hired some other developer to make some smart contract, and he'd asked for some sort of functionality in it, and that he'd also entrusted this guy with, I don't know, tens of thousands of funds for whatever the project was. And he asked me, I mean, he came and said, you're a friend, I hired this developer, it's been like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks. He said he's working on this, I don't know, anti-bot and all sorts of other things. I don't know what's going on. So I said, okay, sure, ask him to send the code. And I look at the code, and I'm reading the smart contract, and I do a Control F. Okay, anti-bot, where is that? I find a function called anti-bot. This function, there's nothing inside. And then there's another one, it's like, and it's just names of all sorts of random functionality, but just nothing inside the contract. And then I start, there's bizarre, nonsensical code as well halfway through. So I call him, I say, look, whoever he says he is, this is not a real developer. Get your money back from him ASAP. And really that same hour, the guy took off with the funds. And instantly, he took off with half of it actually. And somehow actually my friend got the funds back by baiting out the other half, saying, oh, could you send me back and I'll give it to you in a different wallet? And somehow it worked. So thankfully he was just as bad at stealing as he was at coding, but I can't take credit for the recovery, but it was a sight for sore eyes just on the sidelines.
All right, 2 happy ending stories at
Indeed.
the end. And on tears.
I don't know if I can think of one on the top of my head, but I will say that like anyone else in the space, before I became a developer, like I dabbled in trading, and just like everyone else, I had been rugged, I had been honeypotted, I had bought coins and watched it go down 90% in a day. I've had all of the worst things happen to me, and I'm sure some people who are listening to this, that's happened to you, and it's probably gonna happen to you again as well, because there's a lot of tokens that come out every day on every chain. But in no other context, in no other opportunity in the world are you going to have a chance to actually go from nothing to generational wealth or generational ideas like this industry. And for all the negative connotations that people want to put on crypto, for all the quote unquote bad things that people say about crypto, and for sure there are, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, there's bad things that happen, but there's bad things that happen in anything. Nowhere else do you have this democratization of an opportunity to where you can find some project, find some idea and invest in it and literally change your life. And hopefully that inspires you to learn more about this industry, maybe to come up with an idea of your own or to find someone else's idea that you passionately believe in and ride it. And maybe one day that story could be you. You could be the 100x, the 1000x, the people that everyone talks about. And that's never going to happen anywhere else in this time and age. You're never going to be Nancy Pelosi. You're never going to have access to information to play in these other industries that are gatekept, and you have competing against complete algorithmic bots and insider trading and unbelievably wealthy people. Here you're competing against people like DNB, so you have a chance.
We all gonna make it.
Yeah, so I would say if that's you and anyone out there, I hope that you keep trying, because opportunities like this don't present itself very often in life. And if you're here and you're listening to something like this and you're trying to learn about crypto, I would say keep going, keep researching, and find that diamond in the rough and hope it changes your life.
Yes, sir. These are the good old days. Now's the time to do it. No, this is awesome, guys. Thank you again for making time. Is there any last minute things that y'all want to mention to the audience before we head out?
Thank you for your time. I hope you come and check out Ator Protocol. We built a lot of time and effort into this. We have a lot of exciting things coming up in this coming year, including our new rebrand to our new direction. I hope that the message of privacy, not secrecy, will resonate with you. And most importantly, I wish you the most happiest of bull runs, and I hope you change your life for the better. Thanks for your time.